Hello, everybody. It's me again. So, I'm going to answer two questions in this segment. Hopefully, it'll be pretty quick. First question is, of course, one that deserves a ton of attention. And that's the question. It's number 25. It's the question of Jesus's race. So important, such a critical question. This is the point where Christianity is proven wrong. So unfortunate. Okay. Anyway, the question is whether or not Jesus was white, and of course, you could answer that in many different ways because, we don't know. Jesus could have been Anglo-Saxon, possibly. He could have been some sort of Roman or something like that. A lot of people like to say that Jesus was Middle Eastern looking, which maybe he could have been. But, I mean, because Israel was part of the Roman Empire and it was a central location for trade between the Roman Empire and uh, everywhere east, essentially, he could have been black, he could have been Persian, he could have been Greek, he could have been uh, Chinese. Well, I don't know if they had a trade route with Rome, but either way, he could have been. He could have been Indian. There were Indian people who went over there, obviously, because the wise men from the east came over there, and we like to say that they came from the region of India. He could have been Spanish. Yeah, it's very possible. Apparently, I think that's Paul. He was sort of Spanish or something. Either way, Israel was a central location for Jews, and Jews are scattered everywhere. They were all the way from Babylon to Spain. That's the region that they inhabited. And so, because all of them traveled to Jerusalem 3 times a year, they a lot of them probably settled there as well from the outskirts of the empire and non-empire. So yeah, he could have been anywhere from Babylonian to Spain to Black to Anglo-Saxon. It's I mean, you really can't tell. I really like hearing how a lot of times people are absolutely certain that Jesus is one color. Like you hear about the African Hebrews movement, how they say Jesus was black, and they have proof because Samson had locks, 7 locks of hair, because white people can't grow dreadlocks apparently, or that there's some other stuff, or that Jesus was able to fit into the Egyptian crowd because the Greeks absolutely did not take over Egypt at this point. Uh, Either way, yeah, Jesus could have been anything. As for the second question is a bit more serious. It's why does God seem to favor the athlete over the starving child in Africa? And I like this because I recently was brought to my attention that this whole starving child in Africa stereotype is actually not true. Sure that there are starving children in Africa, but many African nations are actually not that bad off. I mean, you look at places in the Congo, of course, and yeah, you get pretty bad places, but they are third world countries, I assume. But you get places like South Africa, which is a pretty big portion. That's like a third of Africa. Maybe not, but either way. It's a pretty big portion of Africa, and that's a fairly modernized area. Nigeria is not that bad off either. Ethiopia, I guess that one's still not catching up with the world. But you get the point. A lot of places in Africa aren't doing too bad. Sorry, children. But kind of goes back to another question regarding whether or not God dishes out blessings fairly. And the answer to that is, of course, no. he, God, throughout the Bible, dishes out curses and blessings. And it is sort of foolish to sort of assume that the God of the Bible, which, you know, Christians all accept the Bible as authority, And none of them, like, even if they do say that God dishes out blessings fairly or, equally across the board, that's just because they didn't read the Bible, because God doesn't. There is places in Job where it's said that God has a certain level of blessing on the wicked and the just. Sure. But at the same time, the just sometimes get really bad things, have really bad things happening to them, and the wicked sometimes have really good things happening to them. But also throughout the Bible, God does not give blessings out equally among nations. Of course, Israel is the prime example, because Israel is the one blessed by God. Is the chosen people of God, and we see that today too. But anyway, it is said that through Israel all the nations of the earth will be blessed. And this can go into a more broad spiritual principle as well, is through the people of God, everyone else will be blessed. And it's a very biblical concept that um, God works in the world through his mediators on earth. So, a lot of times. So when there's a hurricane in Haiti, for instance, the first responders on the ground to help are Israelis, like literally and spiritually, if you want to spiritualize it. And that's just a modern example. This happens throughout history too. It says that through Israel, through thine seed, talking to Abraham, all the nations of the earth will be blessed. And that means any nation that has a covenant with God sort of inherits this sort of blessing as well, though to a lesser degree. And this is why the nations of the West that have produced so much progress in every field, it seems, science, engineering, social progress, etc., these are the ones going out and westernizing other nations, because Western civilization is pretty awesome, because it's based off of this principle. God works in the world, he blesses the world through his subjects, through his servants, and that's us. That's everybody who produced the Western world, um, whether directly or indirectly, because some people produced the Western civilization directly, like it was directly a Christian or a group of Christians who began science, for instance, and are the forefronts in engineering. Or it is someone from the Western world who produces all these changes. And of course, this isn't all it is. People who are from non-Western worlds, or from worlds that do not come from a Judeo-Christian background, they still produce stuff, but not nearly at the same rate as the Western world, which has at its foundation a Judeo-Christian understanding of the universe. So, yeah, to answer the question directly, I suppose, is it's not that God favors one over the other. He loves, well, he actually does favor people. This is clear throughout the Bible. He loves everybody, but he loves some people more. For instance, Israel. He loves Israel way more than his enemies, or than Israel's enemies. So he favors everybody to a degree equally, but he favors some people more because, some people are part of his covenant, some people are not, some people are just his neighbors, while some people are his family, you know. So why does the athlete fare better than the starving person in the Congo? Well, the Congo doesn't have a relationship with God. And this goes into another principle of corporate blessing, where everyone within within the corporate, which generally believes and is righteous, everyone receives a certain level of blessing. And what this means is basically, if you're an atheist living in a generally Christian society, all the blessings that are given to that Christian society also trickle down to the atheist. But if you're an atheist that lives in a generally non-Christian society or non-Jewish society, then all of the non-blessings or the curses still trickle down to the atheist. And that's just an issue of where you live. And it's also an issue of God presenting to us our job. It's our job to go westernize these other nations and bring about and bless those other nations through the innovations that we have because of our foundation in the biblical faith. Yeah. And so to put it simply, why is there unequal blessing? Because God blesses those so they can bless others. Yep. No challenge today. I didn't think of any. So, have a good day, everybody. Shabbat Shalom.